Welcome back to the Ponca City Monthly podcast. I'm your host, Andy. And this week we're discussing something that's been very heavily discussed on the community watch pages. And it also coincides with school about to start. Mm-hmm. On July 6th, Ryan Walters, our state superintendent, kind of dropped a bombshell when he declared that all schools are going to go to free school lunches. And that just sort of sent a frenzy through the schools, and a couple of other things that have happened since then. So we thought we would hear straight from the horse's mouth. We've got Superintendent Adam Leeming from Ponca City Public Schools here to discuss about that. Adam, how are you doing today?
Andy, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
So tell me a little bit about, like I said, this is kind of a hot button issue. Mm-hmm. It's been all over the news. Ryan Walters has kind of dropped this bombshell. Where were you at, and how did you hear about it?
So I actually heard about it through my email, and it wasn't from State Superintendent Walters. It was from our child nutrition director, who had heard it from his daughter, who is a parent, I think, of Yukon, has their kid in Yukon public schools. And she asked, "Dad, is this something is this legit or real?" And he then kicked it to me and said, "Adam, have you seen this?" And so it really started a discussion. And no, let's look into this and see what this entails. So
wow. So was that like on a Monday morning, or was that like on the week? Because he kind of dropped that on a Sunday afternoon. So I was wondering how much of that.
It was a Monday. I think it was about Monday mid-afternoon, or maybe right around noon. That I was made aware of it. I had to go back and look on the email on. And then hearing it third hand it kind of took me back a little bit. So, and then, we kind of looked into that to see if it had merit or if it was even possible. So we started our kind of discussions at that point.
Sure. That was going to be my next question, is like kind of what went through your head when you read that, and like, what's the process that you go through to determine, is this real? Is this something I really need to like lose sleep over, or what's happening?
Well, at first, first time I read, I think I read the subject area or subject line, and I was excited. This is a great opportunity. I almost was like, wow, this could be great for our community and our kids that we serve. But then as I read the details and kind of unpacked that more, I realized at what cost, and then at what authority, and then started some of the nuanced pieces of it started to form in my head of, okay, the greater implications to our Ponca City School District. This could be very scary for us. So,
right, because one of the big caveats of that was that the school would receive no additional funding. It was just they had to decide to do this, and that was it.
Yeah, so here we are, the first week after the fiscal year begins, and all the months we had spent preparing and presenting our budget in June to the board, which by law we have to, and having the board vote on that and adopt it, and with no prior warning or heads up saying, oh yeah, by the way, for our school district, we'd be on the hook for $700,000 of where do you spend or where do you come up with that money to be able to pay for breakfast and lunch for every single kid that goes to your district.
So did you have any prior warning that something like this was coming from him?
So that's a great question. Locally, earlier this spring, we had some SDE officials, State Department of Ed officials, in contact with our district about why we hadn't participated in this. It's called the Community Eligibility Program. And Chef Jeff, who's been our child nutrition director for, Lordy, I think almost 4 decades now, was sharing information about, this is the reasons why, this is the data we've collected, this is, our basically our financials and how our bottom line shapes out each and every year. And give it a little background too, backing up a little bit. Community eligibility has been around since COVID. And it was something when I was first hired on as superintendent that I really wanted our district to participate with, and had investigated with Chef Jeff and our child nutrition director to why aren't we doing this? And is this something we should be providing for the community members? And at that time, he, walked me through the same thing he did this past spring with the State Department of Ed officials was, Adam, it's going to cost your general fund budget $350,000 to do this. And then just with conversations with the board and, okay, well, if we want to do $350,000 here, I'm going to have to cut $350,000 from somewhere else. And what such services and programs do we want to be able to feed kids? So in hindsight now, it makes sense that why the State Department of Ed officials were asking those questions. But what's funny though is they concluded, and we have the email that says it would not be financially viable from the State Department of Ed to Ponca City Public Schools for your school district to participate in this program.
Wow. Okay.
So we thought it was dropped and ended, and until we got that second and third hand email in July.
Part of the email, so he sent out 2 emails. There was the first email that came out and kind of made the announcement, and then we were discussing that we don't know if every district got this, but I know Bigsby, Broken Arrow, I think in Deer Creek in Oklahoma City, where Walters said, "Hey, these schools have plenty of money. It's just tied up in their administrative costs. So maybe they could cut some administrative cost budgets and pay for school lunches." And like you said, that's quite a bit of money. It's not just like a couple of $100.
Yeah. So the numbers that were being thrown around were including all different funds. So to understand school funding, you have to understand that different pots have legal restrictions on how you can spend those money. So locally, one of the hot buttons was, we're just building this new $15 million multi-purpose indoor facility and athletic field and locker rooms. And why can't we use that money for school lunches? Well, those are bond funds, and those are voted on by the citizens, taxpayer or landowners and property owners in your school district, and that's a tax levy that we basically imply on ourselves to say that we want to reinvest in our school structures. And by law, I can apply that to basically maintenance and construction. So HVAC units or roofs or new construction or remodels of facilities. And I think Oklahoma does a great job with that. I think it's one of the things that helps keep our school districts buildings where they're safe and comfortable for kids to learn and gather and be in. Other monies, we have our sinking funds, we have general fund money, we have activity fund money, and each of those have nuanced rules and regulations that come with them. So the money that would pay for school lunches, for example, would be from our general fund, and that is primarily used for personnel, staff. In fact, about 85% of the general fund monies that we receive each year is spent on staff with very little in discretionary spend. And discretionary would be like materials, copy paper, things like that, pens and
all the boring stuff.
The boring stuff that we need. Generally, school districts, they spend it on people. Their general fund money on people. And education, where you're going to see the biggest impact is if you have quality people working with kids. And so when trying to explain that Ryan Walters' initiative has merit, I think the conversation shifts to how do we fund it. And so I know his solution was, well, we just need to cut administrative costs. And unfortunately, we've already been limited by the state on how much we spend on administrative costs. There are there are state laws that cap schools of Ponca City size that you're not to spend more than 5% of your monies on administrative costs. So we spend less than that in Ponca City. So there's not just a lot that goes into administrative cost. So we have to be cognizant and mindful that what we're asking for is either cutting programs, and that's people that lead programs, or oversight on different programs to be able to fund meals for all kids. And I think what also is interesting too is Ponca City Public Schools already provides 80% of our student population. I said 4,500 kids eat for free already. And so we're actually having the argument of, is it worth spending $700,000 to pay for the meals for upper and middle class families?
Absolutely.
And eating free breakfast and lunch. So historically in Ponca City, that conversation has been a non-starter because our community's had the mindset that if you can afford your meals, you need to pay for your meals, so we can provide resources and programming in other areas.
Do you think, you mentioned about it briefly, and I want to go back and talk about it, but you do have the free and reduced lunch program. Tell me about that program and how it works.
So every year at the registration time, we ask parents to complete a free and reduced. It's called the child free and reduced application, and they complete this basic information: name, number of kids in their household, income, and then there's a formula. It's a nationwide formula that our child nutrition staff look at and say, okay, you qualify, and you hit that. Every year. Our numbers seem to be growing on this, but we serve 80% right now is our threshold where we've been the last year on qualify for free and reduced, and those kids go through the line just like everyone else, get the same meals like everyone else, and but there's not a monthly obligation or daily obligation for families. Another misconception I was told, is we get kids that get turned away, and we don't do that. We don't let kids go hungry. We don't embarrass kids in the line. We don't. We make sure that kids have something to eat when they go through that, and we do our darndest to work with families that. To complete those free and reduced applications, even if they suspect they're not eligible, we try to look at that to verify with them, go walk with them side by side to make sure that we're getting all the services we can to their child with the lunch program. But it's one of those deals that I think as we have this conversation, I said $350,000 was what it was going to cost us. The timing of this email and announcement, I think, is a little suspect because we've already approved our budget in July.
Right.
And there is a community eligibility program that we could apply and participate with, and it would shave our cost down to $350. His timing of his email in July, that window had closed, so we would not only eat that $350, but the additional $350,000 we'd have to contribute to the program. So a first year startup cost for this would be $700,000 to Ponca City Public Schools, which in a $49 million budget, $700,000 is a significant chunk of change to find when 85% of your budget is in personnel. Yeah. So it's talking. What staff do we not need to be able to feed kids from middle and upper class families? Yeah,
definitely. And I was going to ask you about that because I know there was some discussion about the particularities of when he decided to drop that. After you had already done the budgets, you're already getting ready for school to start. The time for fun and coming up with ideas is sort of already passed.
Right. So that email would be a fantastic email to send out to say, hey, in the upcoming legislative session, let's unite and talk to our elected officials about how we can make lunches and breakfast free for kids in public schools instead of you're going to do this. And if not, we're threatening your accreditation and you're going to be in forensic audits. And, I think a lot of language that is to whip up the public. But people don't understand we already do audits every year, and we have people that check every nook and cranny for appropriation of funds or issues with money because there's two things that make people mad, and that's messing with their kids and messing with their money. Yeah. And I take both of those very seriously, and I don't want to cause any embarrassment to our community first off, and but also I think it's, as we use our resources wisely, are we being good stewards of those funds and providing the best service we can for the kids in Ponca City, because they absolutely deserve it. And the timing of that email just really put us basically throughout months of work. And I mean, if it could happen, that's another question for down the road, but to put schools on their heels like that after the federal windows have closed, after your local windows have closed for planning and budgeting, and I don't think there was any realistic outcome that we could do this.
And that's something that, again, that I think was the big takeaway was that, okay, yes, we can have these conversations. We just can't have them today. Because everybody was just like, do something today. And it's like, well, there's a process.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly. So to try to wave your wand and say, we can have all these answers and things in place by August 20th, when you get notified the first week in July would be irresponsible. Sure. And assume a lot of I don't know, bravado or uncaring about the community's voice and input into matters like that. So I would if at least a year to have these community conversations and listening sessions, and then being able to formulate a plan on how to approach that. It may be a 2-year process to figure out how to shift resources and a long range plan on, if that was what the community goal was. That we want to be known as the school district that pays for every kid's meals that walks through our doors. I think it's phenomenal. That'd be great, but let's have that conversation and let's make a plan together. Because there will be pain somewhere to get to do that. It's just the money is finite and resources are finite. So,
well, let's ask the hard questions now, because I know that this is on a lot of people's mind. It just came out. I didn't. Again, I don't have school age kids, so I didn't know about this. I was informed. But it's a hot button. Kids aren't going to have, the governor has said no cell phones in school this year. And you clarified it for me to say that means from the time the bell rings in the morning to the time the bell rings in the evening, no phones, not at lunch. How are you handling that? How much does that hurt you?
Yeah, so it's going to be a change for us, especially mostly in our high school environment. So, a little history on this. We kind of had a warning, an idea before the legislative session kicked off that cell phones were going to be a big topic, and cell phone usage amongst children, students in our public schools. The governor started his State of the State address and touched on, Bixby Public Schools and their cell phone policy, which I'm proud to say Ponca City Public Schools cell phone policy was almost verbatim the same as Bixby Public Schools policy. That should be a model for the state on how we move on to cell phones. So when the legislature passed the bill this May and said by the time kids return in August, every school had to have a mandatory cell phone ban from morning bell to afternoon bell. We had to get a policy adopted and get that out to our parents to make sure that they had plenty of time to plan and coordinate. So, I kind of felt a little heat on that. Some issues there with parents thinking this is an Adam Leeming deal or this is Ponca City Public Schools heavy-handed approach, and I've had to try to correct and say no, this is us following the law that was passed, and we don't have an option on this. This is what's going to pass. So, but I think as we have these conversations with our parents, that there are some caveats to the law that I think help rest assured some of their thoughts. With our board members, we've had lots of good questions about how we're going to enforce it. What does it look like? Are there exceptions to this law? And some of the same questions our parents have. So we're happy to walk through that with them.
One of the questions that I had that you answered was you're not actually physically taking the phones. They still have their phones. Yep. They're just not allowed to be out, correct?
Great question. Yeah. And that's something too that we've talked to parents about is that this does not prevent them from bringing a phone to school or having a phone on their person or in their backpack or in their car. Or, a car obviously for the high school. Hopefully they're not driving in middle school. But that they can possess the phone. This prevents use of that device or an electronic device during the school day. So the big change for our kids, mostly at the high school, will be during passing periods. You're not going to be able to get your phone out and check in at home. You're not going to be able to, have your phone out to play games during lunch because the law is clear that it's to be off, not off, but just out of being used during morning to afternoon. Now, there are 3 exceptions. There's medical. So a lot of devices now, if you're diabetic, for example, will have your glucose monitoring app on your phone, and it's synced to a patch that's checking your blood level. So as long as we have that documentation, and the parents that do that already have provided that documentation or do prior to the start of school, that child can have their phone out as long as it's being used for that. Now, if they're texting someone or Snapchatting or Facebook or whatever, then that becomes a violation. So, and we'll have to navigate that together on that deal. The other issue is, one of the parents said, well, what if there's an emergency at school? Like, you go into a lockdown or there's a safety concern, or then yes, during those situations, students are allowed to use their phone, and that's spelled out in our policy on that. And then the third is if it's used for like assistive technology. So we do have some students that are speech impaired or nonverbal and have apps on their phone to help communicate, and that is spelled out in their 504 or IEP plans. And if they're not spelled out, parents, I would encourage you to call our district and let's get that set up for you prior to start of school. But so there are exceptions on how to use your phone. I think the overall spirit of the law was more of helping prevent kids from using phones for bad, trying to curb screen addiction in our students, and to increase their participation during the school day. So I'm hoping we see some positives out of that. Sure. But again, this isn't just Ponca City Public Schools coming in heavy-handed. This is us just complying with the laws that were passed down and told we have to enforce.
How are you going to know that how are you going to enforce this?
Okay.
That's not going to be a fun job for
anybody.
Yeah,
it's not. And I've talked to our elected officials about that. They were quick to do a victory lap on that and saying we fixed the cell phone problem in schools. And in reality, they put the cell phone problem on our desk. And going back to our previous question about administrative cost and Ryan Walters, and we just got to cut admin to do it. Well, at the end of the day, we have to have admin to help enforce these rules. And admin are an important part of the school district to make sure that policies are being followed and kids are being treated fair and teachers are being... Anyways, so to enforce this... we came up with a uniform policy for every one of our buildings, and so parents that have kids at multiple buildings won't be like, well, West does it this way and East does it that way, and my kids at Woodlands and they do it this way. So it's going to be uniform. So the law's pretty clear. You're not supposed to use your phone or wireless device or telecommunication device, whatever. I think it's wireless device during the school day. So if they're found in violation of that, and it's not one of those three instances, it's not a special ed or a 504 emergency situation, then we ask the kids to take it to the office and turn it in, then they can pick it up at the end of the day.
Okay.
I hope that doesn't seem too hard on kids or hard on parents. A few reasons for that. One, we wanted to not burden the teachers with a bunch of additional work, and we didn't want to burden the administrators with, a big deal as we try to transition into that. And thirdly, I don't want to keep kids' phones. We just don't want to be in that business. We want the kid to put it into a storage pouch or locker, and at the end of the day, they pick up their phone. So we shouldn't even touch their phone as staff or employees in that manner. The second time, if they do that again, then we ask them the same thing, turn their phone in the office, and then we call the parent to have them come. Or we actually have the kid call the parent to say, can you pick up my phone today after school? Or, during the day, whenever. So then we want the parents to be made aware again of this is our policy, we're following the law, help us enforce that. The third time, if they do it, it's a 2-week. When they get to school, we ask them to just check their phone in immediately to remove that temptation throughout the school day. Again, they can pick it up after each day for the next 2 weeks. And then if they do it again the fourth time, I think it says a semester, they need to check their phone in or be responsible to check their phone in to remove that temptation of using their device. So, as long as we're doing that, it should be fine and working. But if we have a student refuse to comply or a parent refuse to comply, then we're going to have to go to the code of conduct. And defiance is one of the things that we can accept. We have to follow the laws, and we expect our students and parents to follow the laws. So
I understand that completely. Okay, Adam, I have drilled you on such not fun topics.
Yeah,
school's about to start. You have to be excited. What are some fun things that are going on in school? Come on.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, thank you. No,
we've got some fun stuff going on.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the forum or the opportunity to share some of those. I know those are tough conversations, but we are happy to have those conversations. And Man, I am so excited for Ponca City schools in our community. I get goosebumps thinking about the things that we've done in just 2.5 years. I think people forget that we booted up a whole STEM curriculum and program from ground zero, from bottom to nothing in our first full year last year. Really pleased with some of the things we're getting there. Excited for the future of how we can push more STEM opportunities in for our elementary and middle school kids. I'm just a big believer in more hands-on learning and experiential learning. So that was one exciting thing that I'm looking forward to, how we can grow that. Our internship program, Andy, I don't think people realize in Ponca City, but we are kind of becoming a roadmap for what other school districts in Oklahoma can do.
Wow.
My first year in Ponca City schools in 21, I think we had 40 kids in that. And this kind of started with a conversation with economic development. They were struggling with workforce issues in our community, and businesses. We need workforce. We need people that hire and be qualified and want to come work for us. And then I'm looking at, I have 350 high school seniors every year that we're graduating. Why aren't they getting plugged into our businesses and working? So we've taken that program from 40 kids, a great partnership with PCDA, and now this semester coming up, we have 180 high school juniors and seniors going to have internships in our community.
Nice.
And just different businesses. And that is so cool. I mean, starting from 40 and now we're up to 180, and these kids are getting in an hour, 2, 3 hours of either paid or unpaid work experiences throughout the school year.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen without businesses believing in your school district and your kids, and then 2, having kids that are really interested in plugging into Ponca City. So I think we're the most connected as a school district to our community than I feel like we've ever been. And then lastly, this just happened this summer, and that's our partnership with the Child Development Center. And getting to be able to move our pre-K students back to their home sites, extending our day for the pre-K kids from 8 to 2:20 now to 3:10, and then at the same time getting to partner with the Child Development Center to move into the old Washington pre-K building and provide more childcare options for businesses and for individuals in our community. And our staff is going to get a 20% childcare discount for utilizing the services. So that's more money in the pockets of our teachers and our support employees each month. And it's a great opportunity for the CDC to be able to expand their nonprofit childcare opportunities in our community. And so I just think it's just another example of how we're partnering and trying to serve not only the kids that are walking into our doors, but the whole community. So, it makes me real excited because I've always been kind of a servant at heart, and I just really love public education and just the power of what we can do in transforming kids and transforming people. And just to be able to sit in the seat of superintendent, it's heavy a lot of the times, but it's questions like that makes my heart beat out of my chest. I get so excited for our school district and opportunities we're creating.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again, and be sure to check out Learning with Leeming. It's in our magazine every month, so check that out, and thank you all and have a great day.